Hi, this is Manu Bennett, and by Jupiter's cock, you're listening to Chris Gordon on Ramblings of a Hellblazer.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, listeners, wherever you are in the world at this very moment. That's the catchphrase of me, Chris Gordon, and you are tuned in to Ramblings of a Hellblazer. Don't accept anything less. Anyway, I hope everybody is well, and I hope that whatever you're doing, you are being the best that you can be. Today, I bring to you an interview with an actor I've been trying to get on the show for several months. You may know him as the undefeated Gaul Crixus from Spartacus. You may know him as Azog, the Pale Orc in the Hobbit Trilogy, or as Slade Wilson / Deathstroke on Arrow, and currently he's on our screens as Allannon in the hit MTV series The Shannara Chronicles, based on the books by Terry Brooks. My dear friends, today I present to you the one, the only, Manu Bennett. Hi there, Manu, how are you?
I'm good, brother.
Good. I'm
good, mate.
Cool. So we'll kick straight into these questions for you.
I'm interested trying to get this interview started because of the guy mowing the lawn next door, but he's briefly stopped, so let's get it done.
Yeah. Cool. So who or what inspired you to become an actor?
You know, it was really just a choice made in my younger years when I actually had a bit of tragedy in my family. My mother and brother both passed away in car accidents, and I had the task, I guess, of trying to find a way to navigate through some fairly tumultuous years. And I chose the arts. The arts were, to me, you know, at first I started dancing and music, and all of these outlets really helped me to deal with the emotional deficit that was there because of, you know, these two tragic losses in our family. Yeah. It kind of developed from there. You know, I mean, at first it was just kind of like a way of dealing with the emotions, but then it became a real craft, a real art. Mm-hmm. You know, art is sort of like an expression of one's emotional capacity, you might say. To actually rise in the artistic fields, in anything from music to painting to acting to whatever, you know, you really have to embrace the industry. And for me, it sort of took the first 10 years of my life just to get all of the angst out that was connected with the reason why I started the art, you know, was try to deal with this emotional turmoil. So the next 10 years were then spent trying to refine the craft. And that's building relationships, making sure that you're very focused when it comes to your opportunities, everything from casting to, you know, when you get that job and you need to go on a set and be very professional about it. So yeah, for me, it's been like almost a 20-odd year journey. And it's just, you know, it wasn't something that was preordained or chosen as a sort of as a career path. It was really just a necessity, you know, in my life at the time. And then, you know, that necessity, luckily, I guess, gave me certain qualities that, there's a little hand coming out from under the bed. Whoa, hello. How did you sneak into the room, monkey? You know Daddy's doing an interview.
I know.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I did see someone appear just a couple of minutes ago in the background, like a little...
It's my own little golem. My precious. Come on, sweetheart. You got to go down and join your sisters. Daddy's just doing a quick interview. Okay, come on, give a kiss. Anyway, so that's what's going on in my life right now. You know, I've got 3 lovely daughters, and so you know, one of the big challenges with being an actor, having to travel the world, doing television, film, whatnot, is really just sort of balancing it all out now. You know, I've got this beautiful family, and I have to travel a lot with my work.
I can imagine.
So, you know, after mastering the art and the craft, I'm now back to the basics of just being a good dad.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, you are very much a family man. You can see that from obviously your social media, how much of a family man you spend. So it's lovely to see that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, you kind of look back at your own childhood, and when you see your own children, you sort of see this incredible opportunity to provide, you know, and I just love providing for my kids and my family. You know, it's a gift that I'm able to do what I love, to be the provider, you know, not just have to go out and do a 9-to-5 grind. I absolutely love what I do, and hopefully that's going to transmute through to my kids, and they're already creative as they are, but you know, I have to hide them sometimes from some scenes, but and that's kind of funny, playing all these tough guy roles, and my kids basically just see me as one big soft daddy. It's funny.
Bit of a far cry from Crixus, really.
I run with the fans down at the shopping mall, and some young teenage guy will walk up to me and go, "Oh man, are you Slade Wilson?" I go, yeah, and then my 3 daughters are like tugging on my hand, going, "Daddy, take us to the toy world." So it's a beautiful dichotomy.
Awesome, cool. So, what kind of role would you actually aspire to do?
Oh, there's a lot of great stuff coming out. I mean, I love playing Deathstroke, and I love all these new adaptations to screen, whether it be fantasy or whether it be from the comic book genres. I kind of like really cutting edge stuff. I really loved working with Stephen DeKnight. I thought Stephen DeKnight's scripts for Spartacus were just so wonderful and imaginative and cutting edge. Whenever I read a Spartacus script, I knew there was some leap in production that was going on, whether it just be through the script and the visuals, and it was his work is amazing, and I'd love to see Stephen DeKnight become a feature film writer.
We're playing here.
Oh, I have another daughter's arrived in the room. You know what this whole interview is going to be about? My 3 daughters arriving in the room.
We're playing here.
You're playing here, are you?
Yep.
Oh, and what should Daddy do while he's doing an international Skype call?
Do it in your room.
I'll do it in my room. Okay, but there's a guy cutting the lawn next door. What do you want to say to everybody out there?
I had me and Huey really want to play here.
You really want to play? Okay, I'll tell you what. Daddy will take his international Skype call and go into another room so you can play with your Barbie dolls. Okay? Is that your Barbie there?
Me and Huey.
Yeah. Okay, darling. Okay, I'm moving. Excuse me, guys. I have to move rooms. I've been ordered out by my daughter. Deathstroke has been evicted from the kids' room.
Yeah, just what you're talking about then, yeah. The undefeated Gaul has been defeated by the kids.
Don't put it like that. That's funny. Hilarious. Okay. So now I'm back in my room. The safety of, but we'll probably hear the guy with the
the trimmer in a minute. Moving on to Spartacus then. Obviously you have got a very keen ability to make sure that you train hard for scenes, give everything you've got in a scene, which is very commendable. What skills were you able to pick up in Spartacus? Was there a gladiator boot camp, for example, that you had to sort of attend?
We trained very hard on Spartacus. There was a lot of expectations, of course, that we'd be physically capable of pulling off all of this incredible physical visual that would be part of that gladiatorial world. Mm-hmm. I think they went about casting people with all of that in mind.
Yeah.
I'd been a professional athlete to some degree, young, with rugby and athletics, and with the dancing background that I had, that, my movement skills were pretty high. Once I went into gladiator boot camp, all the stunt guys and the fitness guys knew that I was already kind of in the area of physical ability that they wanted. This really came down to dedicating ourselves to the tone of each character. Mm-hmm. And the tone of Crixus was just so, again, compliments to Stephen DeKnight. The tone of Crixus was just such a well-written and such a great arc. His journey from being quite, in season 1, being quite an ignorant, bullying kind of kingpin of this prison, this gladiatorial ludus. It was great to paint him in a way that I knew I was putting him into the corner. Mm-hmm. I knew that as far as the audience was concerned, I was trying to make them dislike him as much as possible.
Yeah.
It was something that my producer aside after episode 2 or 3 of the first season and said, "Manu, I don't like your character, and we need to like him because we're going into a storyline with a slave girl called Navia. It's a love story, mm-hmm. and with everybody not liking Crixus, we're not going to be able to pull this love story off."
Yeah,
and I kind of, I said to him, "Trust me on this one. I can make this work. It's really about pulling people from one side of their emotions to the other side. They say love and hate are very closely related in terms of the intensity of the feeling that you have with characters. And you know, in my life, I've found that some of my best relationships have come from adversity.
Right.
And yeah, I think that in the end, that's what made people so passionately connected to the character of Crixus, because he was written in this superb way that there was this first season where there was all this resistance between him and Spartacus, and the audience felt that resistance. And then in the second season, which was a prequel where Andy Whitfield, you know, was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer, and they had to write this prequel without a Spartacus. It was quite an incredible feat in itself. I mean, how you can actually put a show to air called Spartacus and it
without
doesn't have
Spartacus. Yeah,
this was phenomenal. Stephen DeKnight, again, you know, did this incredible job of basically turning my story into the Spartacus story. So in that particular prequel, I'm the one who arrives and has all this innocence and is sort of torn to shreds and, you know, morally and psychologically in the arena.
Yeah.
And at that point, the audience are suddenly looking at this slave with long hair, you know, just like they did with Spartacus when he first arrived, going like, who's this young innocent soul that's being dragged into this nightmare? And it was Crixus.
Yep.
So there was a sudden empathy for my character that arrived with that episode. And then suddenly everybody put all the pieces together and went, oh, wow, it's incredible. This is all flipped back to front, and this is how Crixus became. And that's why he became so vicious and kind of, you know, defending himself and trying, you know, because that's the only thing you can do as a gladiator is fight for your own survival. You know, so many betrayals going on in the background that you have to play with this poker face and get your way through, like Crixus's relationship with Lucy Lawless, you know, Lucy Lawless, you know, Lucretia was just palpable. Lucy was such a great actor. You know, you look at her, just, you know, she plays every moment of a scene with such precision. It's really like a game of chess. Yeah. If you're a conscious actor working with somebody that technically brilliant, it's such fun because it is just like playing a game of chess. And you know, like Lucy's not like at all like this person who's practiced, you know, a scene by rote and just comes in, you know, like this is, you know, some actors have just got an idea of projecting themselves onto the camera, and it can be quite annoying to be not in a scene with an actor because they're just sort of portraying their own moment and that's it. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, the joy of working with good actors is that you play the game. The game is an open game, and it's got the kind of the fluidity of jazz. You know, it's just improvisation in a way, but it's still grounded in the material, and it's just great. I mean, Lucy was just a wonderful person to work with. Yeah,
highly envy you working with her. She was gorgeous in there. She was in Spartacus as well. So
I'll leave that comment up to you, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
I might talk about gorgeous co-actresses, but no, she's fantastic. You know, she really is. You know, working with Andy Whitfield was such an honor and a privilege, given his journey was cut short. You know, having been able to have the opportunity to see him at his best was just really a privilege for all of us. You know, everybody at Spartacus loved Andy Whitfield. He was really just such a beautiful soul. And, you know, his passing was such a devastating blow, not only internally within our show, but it was felt globally just because, you know, people felt his presence. They knew that he was something special. You know, the replacement, the moment where, you know, the studio said, okay, we're going to recast, and Liam McIntyre came to audition. Also, Stephen Amell was one of the people that came to audition.
Oh, right.
He was one of the people that came and read for this. You know, at the same time he was reading for Arrow. You know, so I don't quite how it worked out, but he ended up on with Arrow, which was perfect for Stephen. But you know, like Liam had this innocence, had this kind of Boy Scout quality. You know, this really nice. You know, he's such a great heart, great soul. Very different to Andy. Yeah, but in his own right, he had such big shoes to fill. He had a lot of pressure early on from directors and producers to manifest this particular thing that they all had in mind. At first, when an actor has to come in under that sort of pressure, it's very difficult. And I remember stepping aside with Liam on numerous occasions, just trying to help him as a friend to settle his emotions and his own sense of himself as an actor in that role, because so many people in high places were throwing directives at him. But he ended up picking up the slack and really riding with it. And I think that his real strength came in the final season. He really hit the mark. I think I remember the scene where he and I separated and went our own separate ways, Crixus and Spartacus, in that final season. And I remember doing the scene with him across the table and thinking that the power was there, that he'd really found his place in the role. But, the whole journey with everybody, I mean, Peter Mensah was incredible as Doctor. Just such a strong presence and a wonderful anchor point for all of us, really, Peter Mensah. Nick Tarabay made such a wonderful villain as Asher.
He was brilliant, yeah.
Really, he brought such an incredible tone to the whole show, his
conniving and very much.
Yeah, but he hated doing it, and I felt a lot of emotion for him because he had some very valid points. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to play that Arab guy, being of Lebanese ancestry. He didn't want to play this stereotypical the bad guy from the Thief of Baghdad or something. You know what I mean? He just didn't want typecast, and I really understood his pain at a certain point when he felt a little bit like he was just representing a culture in a certain way, that was, they're all backstabbers and, it's kind of real bad generalization at times.
It can be, I guess.
And, he continued to play such an incredibly strong role doing what he did. He really made a wonderful character out of Asher. There was empathy that you hated. There was so many things about it. Big kudos to him. Then we had the likes of Jai Courtney, who was there early in the show, who really shone and has gone on to have an incredible career in his own right. I think he's in the new Suicide Squad as well, playing Captain Boomerang.
I think he is, yeah. That's going to be a cracking
film. Which is funny
because
Tarabay played Captain Boomerang in the television version.
Oh, right, did he? I didn't
want to note that out there. Two Spartacus alumni have ended up playing Captain Boomerang. But I think Jai owns it because he's an Australian, which Captain Boomerang obviously was, and I don't even know how Nick an Australian character, but that's kind of funny. But there was other performances. Viva Bianca was just incredible as Alithea. Just such another wonderfully calculated actress who just knows how to turn it on and off and play subtle, like a snake lying in the goose. She just plays such beautiful stuff. She's beautiful as well. The fact that she can act that menacingly and connivingly, and it's just such a beautiful girl. Just is another huge merit to her attention to that character and pulling it off. Yeah. Of course, I got to work with two girls working as Navia. So Cynthia Dye was of course the final Navia, and she was just such a nice person to work with. Mm-hmm. But I could never. It was funny because the way she is in life, whenever she started acting on set, I was shocked. It's kind of like this lady, and she sort of walks around as very proper, and she carries herself beautifully, and as a person. That when she got onto set and suddenly became this Navia character, it would always shock me. I'd always think in the scene, kind of like it'd take me a few moments to get into it, because I'd be so used to talking with the offset Cynthia, and then suddenly I'm on set with her, and she's like suddenly just switches this switch on, and these emotions come out, and this power, and this, if she had to use anger, she'd use anger, and I'd be like, whoa, hey. she's somebody who really does have the chameleon qualities of an actress and can pull them off beautifully. Just, Spartacus was a very, very special journey, very special. And then along came The Hobbit.
Oh, yes, with Azog, the Pale Orc.
Yeah, it was something that came out of the blue, actually. It was the last episode of Spartacus I was filming. So I was very full on with Spartacus, and And they'd originally cast Azog, was another person who'd appeared in Spartacus and who I actually went to high school with.
All right, okay.
Yeah, this guy, Conan Stevens, got the role, and I had gone to high school with this guy in Newcastle, Australia. And he used to be really tall and skinny and lanky at school, and then all of a sudden he got giant,
Right.
and I think he'd had a run at WWE in America, but then he was cast on Spartacus as a character called Sedulus. There was a scene where his character Sedulus tried to rape Naevia, and I came at him and tried to bring him down, but Spartacus ended up cutting his face off.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, it was crazy. Conan's face went flying in the air, Another great Spartacus moment.
Oh,
but,
it wasn't short of gruesome.
But at that particular time when he'd come on to Spartacus, I'd invited him over to my house for dinner because we wanted to catch up and talk about our old school days.
Yeah.
And he sat down to eat, and he said to me, "Manu, I just got cast in The Hobbit." And I was like, "What character?" And he said, "Azog." And I choked on my piece of food because I'd read for Azog myself. But Peter wanted to go with somebody who was
the height and the size,
7 foot tall. And, I congratulated him. I never told him at the table that I'd auditioned. I felt I still feel bad about that to this day. Let the ego get in the way there, but that's funny. So he went down and he shot Azog, of mine, Conan Stevens, that I went to school with.
Yeah.
But a year later, we got this phone call from Peter Jackson's office saying they wanted me to come down and film Azog, and I didn't really quite understand it. But I think what had happened was Conan's performance was in this giant suit with a mask and all this kind of prosthetic makeup and da-da-da-da. And I just don't think that Peter was happy with the results of that makeup and this certain look of Azog that had been created.
Right.
And so, to my fortune, unfortunately for Conan, it wasn't quite fortunate, but he at least he did get to go in there and work with Peter and everything. But they ended up recreating the character using CGI and motion capture. So I got brought in pretty much on the same creative process as Andy Serkis making Gollum. I had to come in and wear the tight bodysuit with these little balls that basically mark wherever you've got a joint that moves.
Yeah, how hard was it to do that kind of accent?
It wasn't really that hard, to be honest.
Yeah.
The biggest difficulty was, well, actually, look, if you took somebody who wasn't an experienced actor, I think they'd freeze up because they wouldn't know how to act outside of themselves.
Right.
But I'd had a fair bit of experience, and of course I'd been doing Spartacus, so the whole kind of menacing giant size of Azog and his warrior skills was something that I just did 3 years of it. So that was a kind of an easy step for me. And funnily enough, the guy that I ended up doing my fight scenes against down in Wellington at the Weta Studios and working with Jackson Green on the motion capture soundstage, Shane Runge is his name. Right. Well, he played Dagon, who was Ash's friend when Asher first arrived. In the prequel, it shows Asher arriving with this guy called Dagon, right? And this Shane Runge was somebody who I'd fought on Spartacus. So I got down with Peter Jackson. Shane's like, thing is, Shane's like about 6'6", 6'7".
Good God.
And he had to play Thorin, who, of course, in size to Azog is like, a midget. So Shane would put this headgear on and a mouth guard on and then sort of got these big pads on the side of his head and went on his knees so that he'd be sort of short. And then I had this big warhammer, Azog warhammer, and I just started beating him. It was pretty vicious, actually, and Shane took a real beating because Peter wanted all of this stuff to look real. He made me put weight on. He actually made me put some sandbag weights on my war axe in order to make it look really heavy as it hit Shane in the head. Well, there's a few stories floating around about how aggressive I am on scene, and it's funny because I am for starters, but when you're trying to get the most out of these warrior moments in series and film, it's so important to remember who you're dedicating the role to. Like when I was playing Crixus, I felt this huge responsibility that this man had actually died in this slave revolution back in 76 BC, and I was actually taking on his spirit. Yeah, and it's sometimes you get just to play whatever role it is, but you've really got to hone into that character. I mean, if you're going to be a great actor, I think you really have to make every effort you can to embody the spirit of characters. And when you're playing physical roles like this, the difference between doing soft movements and then fully committed movements, it really translates on the camera. And when you work with the stunt guys, these guys are there, and really good stunt guys, I find, are there to really work hard and to get close to the reality. You do get onto some sets, and they've automatically got this kind of no, safety first, we're not going to go that far, and you'll get pulled back, and you'll have a restrictive thing placed upon the physical presence there. And that's usually just a kind of a policing mechanism that, when it's put into force without, as just a generic thing, then it kind of, you find its place, and you go onto shows and there's that kind of generic policing on safety. I found that on Arrow, even though the stunt guys are brilliant. James Bamford is brilliant, and those guys can fill it up. But then you find yourself in a scene, and you kind of come into the physical action, and you're about to explode, and then they go, cut! The stunt guys take over. And sometimes the stunt guys' actions aren't as big as who you bring to the character. So all of a sudden, it sort of becomes kind of like a soft physical presence to the character. And then it comes back to your facial, and your facial is like fully dedicated. And then it comes wide again. And it's sort of like in this kind of like dance thing that's going on. Right. And not saying that was the case in Arrow, but I found that in Arrow, there was definitely this need to bubble wrap a little bit more safety of characters. I don't know, maybe they'd heard about Spartacus and
they just didn't want and
knew that we all ended up in the A&E every sort of week. But I mean, full respect to James Bamford and the stunt crew there, and the guy who was my double anyway over there, I'd worked with back in New Zealand. He'd actually worked with us on Spartacus as well.
Oh, right.
So it's kind of
a theme going,
Yeah, I mean, the industry is quite small, and you run into people. It's kind of funny. You do cross paths. And then again, it's kind of expanded. It's kind of massive, and you don't know half. But it's funny how in my career, I do keep on circling around with some people, and it's been, a real treat, because usually it sort of seems as though it's almost supposed to be like Shane Runge. Yeah. And it's nice to circle around and work with these people.
All right, cool. One question I've got from The Hobbit, which came in late, was it difficult to speak Orc? And if so, would you be able to say something for us now in Orcish?
Well, it is. It is more so because Peter Jackson wouldn't distribute the scripts over any kind of Gmail or stuff like that. You'd never be sent the script to your email server or whatever. Yeah. You would only get the script when you arrived in Wellington at your hotel, and then you'd be getting woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go film. Yeah. So I would get these scripts, and I'd look at them and go, I don't understand any of that, of course. And then a dialogue coach, Leith was her name, she would ring me and say, Manu, you've got the script in front of you, let's go through it. And we'd read it in the hotel the night before. And then I'd say, well, okay, I'm going to spell this all out phonetically in a way that, so if it's written in a certain way and I don't understand that writing, then I'm going to sort of rewrite it in the phonetics that I can understand.
Okay.
So things like, there's a line that's Obachtilugnak, Gundenizi, Gundenach. It's kind of like this, can you smell the fear? So Gundenizi, Gundenach. I'd put GOONDENEEZA on a card, and somebody would hold that up somewhere in the studio. So when I was walking around as Azog, wherever my line of vision was, I'd get some assistant in the studio to hold up this cue card there, and then I would just read it as I was moving around in the scene, trying not to look like I was reading off cue cards. But unfortunately, that was the way it had to be done. Unfortunately, you could do it. You can get away with it. But it was a kind of an interesting process in that. Also, when I shot Azog, all of the principal photography had been done, so So I never got to work with any of the actors. You know, Richard Armitage and I had this giant battle scene at the end of the third movie, and of course he wasn't there when I did that scene. So, you know, it was Shane Runge. So it's funny how there were these moments, or Mana. There was Mana as well, another stunt guy from Spartacus was down there working as well. So these guys, I kind of fought these stunt guys, and then as Peter Jackson put me onto the film, put my image onto the film, it was opposite Richard Armitage.
Yeah.
So some of it was duplicate fighting. Some of it had been established. So I had to do certain moves that would correlate with the fight scene with Richard Armitage. But, you know, some of the things I had to make up myself, like being underneath the ice and then bursting up through. I said, need some air time. You know, I need to be, when Azog comes up through this ice, he needs to hang in the air like Michael Jordan, you know. And if you jumped on the ground, you just didn't get enough air time. So I asked the stunt guys whether they had a mini tramp, because I know they usually, and the day they did, they had one just in the next studio, so they rushed it in, and I kind of jumped on this mini tramp, and it gave me enough height to sort of do this elongated kind of strike with my weapon and sort of hang in the air a bit longer. Just little tricks that. Awesome. You know, I think one of the proudest moments of my acting, which is one of the best choices I thought I ever made, was when I said to Peter Jackson, when I was sitting on the back of this giant green pommel horse, and that was meant to be later that would become my warg, a giant wolf. And I said to Peter, "Am I on this thing like for 3 movies?" And he said, "Yes. You'll be riding this particular warg." And I said, "Well, is there something special about my warg? Like I'm the king of the orcs, you know? Is this could it be like I'm the Pale Orc, right? So maybe it's an albino. Maybe I found it when it was a puppy in a litter, and it was I went, oh, I want the little white one." You know, and then I raised it to become my warg, and in that case, then I had this relationship with it. So when we did that particular line that was Gundenizi Gundenast, which is "Can you smell the fear?" I asked Peter whether I could, and at the time, of course, you know, I don't have my arm cut off, but Azog does, and he's got this pitchfork there instead of hand. So I said, "Can I use that pitchfork that'll be on this arm to scratch the back of my warg's neck, and then can I whisper this line to my warg, you know, can you smell the fear?" As though I'm going to feed my warg with these guys who are up. This is the scene when they're all up the tree in the first movie. You know, Gandalf and Thorin and all the dwarves are up the tree. So there was this moment where I sort of brought this inanimate thing that I was writing in the studio. I brought it to life, and I formed a relationship with it, even though it was just this green screen pommel horse that I was sitting on. And when I scratched the back of the animal's head in the studio, there was nothing in front of this pommel horse. So I had to say, "Peter, how far out does its head come?" And so we had to create this thing. And the first time I almost fell off the front of the pommel horse, and they're leaning forward trying to reach out to this giant head to scratch it. But there's so many little moments of making Azog that were different to any other experience with acting. You know, motion capture is definitely the idea of becoming completely outside of yourself and filling the entity of another being. Yeah. And, you know, Andy Serkis did it as a sort of a lizard fish kind of creature called Gollum, and I had to do it as this giant orc. And wearing that little tight body stocking that you have to wear when you do motion capture. It definitely, I think it was easier to play a lizard fish. It's having to play really big. It was like, I felt quite diminutive when I was wearing this body suit.
Awesome. Brilliant story.
A gimp. Funnily enough, I'm going to the Hateful Eight premiere tonight here in New Zealand, in Auckland.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm actually doing an interview with Quentin Tarantino. Oh. Yes. It'll be fun having a chat with him.
Yeah. I'd love to get him on here, as if. Maybe one day. All right, cool. Moving on to Arrow quickly. So a couple of questions for Arrow and your role in Arrow. Did you research the Deathstroke and Slade Wilson role?
I had no idea about Slade Wilson or Deathstroke when I was called in for the audition for Arrow. I hadn't been part of the comic book fan groups when I was young. I read Tintin, I read Asterix, but I'd never really gotten into comic books. So the way that I grounded that character was that I'd spent the week before that audition. I'd been over in Kuwait, and we'd been invited to go to Kuwait and Afghanistan to visit the troops, the U.S. military, as part of the USO tour. And I just spent time with these special forces guys, and I had a real feeling of them, having been with them. When I got to Los Angeles, that when I was called in for the audition for this role, I really just kind of mimicked the environment that I'd just been in, and the nature of these men that I'd just spent time with. And a lot of them had seen a lot of action. And they were just no-nonsense guys. They weren't big speakers. They didn't speak loud. They just spoke with a kind of directness that you knew they weren't talking shit. Like they were just straight up. And so when I got into the studio and I heard these actors through the door doing their auditions, and I could hear how performance-based a lot of them were, I just kind of got in there and I just really grounded, the character on these particular special forces guys that I'd met, like this guy called Knight, who was just some badass guy. I asked everybody when I was sitting around the table when I was in Kuwait, I said, who's like the real Rambo amongst this group? Who's really been in the thick of it? And they pointed to this guy called Knight. And I just made it my journey for the next couple of days to hang out with this guy as much as I could and learn as much as I could from him. And then, like when I arrived in LA a few days later, primed to play a Slade Wilson audition.
Fantastic.
Knight had actually shown me this chokehold.
Right. And
applied it to the reader in the room during my audition for Arrow. And the guy fell unconscious on the floor after I tried it. And I just hadn't really done it myself before, and I didn't realize it was so effective. But kind of people know this story. It's been out there for a while, but it's true. It's true. It happened, and somehow David Rappaport, the casting director, has got it on tape somewhere. And really, one day it'll find the light of day, and I think it's going to be quite funny for people to see just how I got that role and how intense the actual audition was. The audition was intense. It was great.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it sounds, the Slade Wilson that you sort of portrayed was very much a special force. You could see that sort of intensity about him as well. Definitely. Okay, I've got another question for Arrow. This is from Cameron Miller. He's a 12-year-old. He's a son of a friend of mine. And he'd just like to know how Slade escaped the island. This was way back when, I think we saw him in the police station.
Yeah, well, the thing, I told Oliver that I swam. And I said that because that's what was written on the script. And that was written by the writers. So you got to ask the writers these questions. Like when Thea dislocated her arm and stuck it outside that bar in Argus, because Oliver said these prisons were made for grown men, not young girls. This top security prison that's impossible to break out of has a button just around the corner. If Slade Wilson had taken his pants off and tied a knot in the end of it, he probably could have flicked it around and hit that damn thing. It was ridiculous. Look, honestly, some things are just, better not to ask questions and just go with it. But, I kind of of course I read that and I was like, yeah, come on. But the way that I played it was that this is what happened, kid. Mirakuru. It's a very powerful little elixir. Awesome. So yeah, that's the way it was written, and that's the way it is. That's the way it exists in this world of fantasy.
Fantastic, cool. Okay, moving on to your current work then, Shannara Chronicles. I'm caught up now with episode 3, and I've got to say it's really starting to pan out into something which is going to be epic. For not just for your own role, as obviously Allannon, who you described as Gandalf meets Deathstroke, but obviously the whole cast are starting to now really. I mean, they were anyway. They had gripped from the episode 1, but the development is there. You can see how these characters are coming out.
I think the audience just has to understand that to get a true sense of a character, the character has to be themselves. The actor has to feel comfortable in the role. Mm-hmm. And I'll put it out there. When we started Shannara, these young actors, there's a lot of weight on their shoulders to do what the directors say, to try to figure out all the different messages that are coming from above. The producers are saying one thing, the directors are saying another thing, their instincts are saying something else, and everyone's just trying to make a show so that when the numbers come back, these wonderful practitioners who are involved will all stay employed in a wonderful project. But sometimes the tone needs just this time to settle, and that applies with Shannara. It applied with Spartacus as well. The first episode of Spartacus got hammered by the critics because it was excessive in so many different ways, and none of the actors had really sort of found their strides, and it just takes a little bit of time for that to happen. So I think episode 4 of Spartacus is when Spartacus took off, and I think the same with Shannara. I think episode 4 is where you suddenly see Austin Butler settle into his role. You see Poppy kind of like evade all of this kind of over-dramatic stuff that she's had to carry as the lead princess. You know, she's had to make so many turns emotionally in the first couple of episodes. It's flying so fast, the storyline, that the consistency for the actors and actresses, you know, is really quite tough because they're just trying to hit these bullet points of story progression that are just written this way and that way and this way and that way, and so they're And you know, the relationship side of things just takes a little bit of time on Shannara to just find its rhythm. But you know, you can see with the fans' response just heading past episode 3 now that they're starting to see all of this happen. So yeah, like all things, mate, it just takes a little bit of patience. We're all spoilt out there in viewership world. You know,
yes,
with Netflix and you know, all these wonderful shows that are out there. It's very competitive, but Shannara has definitely gone out there, and MTV have taken a huge leap of faith in themselves and in the producers of this show to raise the bar for TV production. And they do, you know. I mean, it's obvious just in the trailers and seeing the visual effects of Shannara that we're being treated on television to type of artistry that's usually reserved for filmmaking. And even though the act, what's been commented upon thus far, just let that work itself out, because it does, and it will, in the course of the show, it definitely just everyone finds their feet, and the show starts to fly. And it starts to fly with visual effects that nobody has seen on television before. So you know, that's where that is, in my opinion.
Excellent, cool. Did you have to? I know you've got your Maori background. I noticed when in episode 1, I think it was, you gave a greeting with Eventine, and it was the head-to-head. And to me, it's like the old traditional. Did you bring that in yourself? It's like it looked like an old Maori type of greeting.
The thing is that John Rhys Davies and I had done that hongi, you know, on numerous occasions, just as a way of saying hello on set.
Right.
And so when it came to that scene, I said to the director, Jonathan Liebsman, you know, can we do the hongi? And Jonathan was really welcome to it. But funnily enough, in that particular scene, when we did it, Jonathan Rhys Davies didn't quite get his nose forward. He sort of dropped his head a little bit too fast, sort of touched the heads, but our noses didn't press the way it does in a traditional hongi. But the intention was there, and that's what it was meant to be. But really, as a hongi, it didn't quite hit the mark, but it was the same intention, which was beautiful, because, you know, maybe if it was a full-on hongi, then it would have been kind of a bit too obvious that was what it was, and it wouldn't have necessarily fitted into that moment in time, unless Alan Maori. Which he is.
Very, very true. Cool.
But you know, Terry Brooks, you know, didn't write in the back pages of Shannara that
he's a Maori druid.
Alan's a Maori, but Terry's happy with my performance, so that's
what counts. Excellent. Did anyone rib John Rhys Davies for being an elf after being known for so long for playing a dwarf?
Oh yeah, you know, he just sort of snubs his nose now at Orlando Bloom and says, "Now I am the king of the elves." Because I think Orlando was like a prince.
He was, yeah.
So awesome. That's Jonathan's retort on that one is, "Take that, Orlando! I'm the king of the elves." But you know, we were all very excited and honoured to work with Jonathan Rhys Davies. The Raiders of the Lost Ark was really my penultimate film growing up. I must have seen it 7 or 8 times at the cinema.
Oh yeah.
And I used to be able to. I could sit in the room and recite the whole movie at one stage. So you know, the moment where he goes bad date, you know, he
grabs it from the monkey. Yeah.
You know, I always remember Jonathan Rhys Davies' performance, and that being an actor and moving along and being able to work alongside somebody who's part of your own young evolution in and coming to love film, was very special. And I remember the first scene I did with John, we'd had such a long chat about everything, and I told him how buzzed out I was to work with him and everything like that, that we kind of looked at each other in the first scene that we did together, and we completely both just couldn't get the words out. And we had this laugh, and then he went, come on, boy, let's get on with it. In his deep voice, and he just, we nailed it. He's great. I mean, of course, he's incredible to work with, an incredible energy.
Awesome, cool. So, I mean, obviously the Hobbit, the Shannara Chronicles has got a huge following as well, and you yourself are becoming, if not become, a legend amongst your fans for the roles that you've played. How do you feel about all the fan support? I mean, you seem to love the interaction. You're very, obviously...
Look, I fundamentally, I love doing the job, and I think that, as an artist, I hope I come from the right place. And it does go back into quite a trying time in my life.
Yeah.
And I've always just tried to be honest with my emotional portrayals, trying to keep them grounded with the right amount of interpersonal conflict and angst, with a degree of hope and necessity for love. And I know what loss is about, so... when those layers of loss and struggle and conflict, like Allannon, or like Crixus, or like Slade, when he loses Shadow, or these moments where it becomes very pertinent to feel the gravity of loss. I know it. I've been there. I've been at my mother and brother's funerals. Fortunately, I don't. That sort of just comes offhand, but it's kind of like old history for me. But that's these moments that are vivid still in my young soul. That's buried in this aging man and father now. They're what I bring to the fore when I need to send out that signal, and I think that the audience does feel it. So I'm quite accustomed now to going and doing conventions and having people come and connect with me very personably. They come up and they go, "Oh, it's as though we know each other."
Yeah,
and it's because I think there's just that empathy. There's that wonderful connection through. People tell me their problems when they come up. I embrace that people's honesty is like that, and they can identify kind of in some way that, as an artist, that's just what I'm trying to do. Like people who like certain songs for certain reasons. A certain song will make them feel a certain emotion.
Yep.
Hopefully, I think my acting might be able to do that with my particular fan base, and that's just a beautiful connection. It's something I'm proud of, and I'm always very humbled but satisfied when a fan comes up and we get a connection because of that.
Awesome, thank you. Well, that actually brings us to a wrap for today.
Yeah.
Cool. So, anything you want to last minute quickly say before I stop recording for people?
I thank people for following my career as an actor. I am very grateful that I have this opportunity to part of what people turn to as a way of engaging their lives, as a way of feeling story. And I just hope I can continue to do so with great practitioners. That I've already worked with some really wonderful ones, but I just hope to continue to work with artists that are willing to sacrifice their time and their energies to get that really beautiful signal out there that entertains and makes people feel.
Awesome, cheers, brilliant. Thank you very much. That's great. Wow, what can I say to that? Thank you very much to Manu Bennett for taking the time to talk to me and answer the questions that you guys have sent in there. Hope you all enjoyed listening to that as much as I did. I cannot wait to bring you more in 2016. But for now, this is Chris Gordon on a high, signing out from talking with Manu Bennett. Goodbye.